First of all, subscribe the channel The Father They Erased Came Back on My Wedding. My name is Vivienne Kwan, and on the day I got married, I walked down the aisle with a man I had never truly known. Not because I wanted something dramatic, not because I planned a surprise, but because the father who raised me chose my sister over me, and the father I was told to forget stepped forward when nobody else would. The wedding march had already begun. Guests were standing, the doors to the ballroom were open, and I was waiting for Gerald Hartman, the man who had been my legal father since I was 7 years old. For 31 years, I had called him Dad. For 31 years, I had accepted whatever scraps of affection he offered. For 31 years, I kept believing that one day I would matter as much as my younger sister. That morning finally proved I never would. When I reached the entrance, I saw Gerald standing there, but he wasn't waiting for me. His arm was linked with my sister's. She leaned against him dramatically, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My mother stepped between us. "Vivienne," she whispered nervously, "your sister's having a difficult time. Her boyfriend left her last week. Gerald thought it would help if she walked with him." I stared at her. "What?" "He doesn't want her feeling alone today." I couldn't even process the words. This was my wedding, and somehow my sister's breakup had become more important than the daughter getting married. The music continued playing. Guests waited. Nobody seemed to think anything was wrong except me. The familiar feeling settled into my chest. The feeling I'd carried since childhood. The feeling of being second, always second. I stood frozen in my white dress while my father chose someone else. Again. Then everything changed. A voice spoke softly behind me. "May I?" I turned. A man stood near the corridor wall, late 50s, silver hair, dark suit, nervous eyes. He held out his arm, nothing more. No explanation, no speech, just an invitation. And somehow, before my mind understood, my heart did. I knew exactly who he was. Thomas Hale, my biological father. The man I'd been told abandoned me. The man I'd been told didn't care. The man I'd spent my entire life believing was the villain. I looked at him. He looked terrified, like he expected me to reject him. Instead, I slipped my arm through his, and together, we walked. The moment Gerald turned and saw us, his face went completely white. The ballroom fell silent. The music continued, but nobody was listening anymore. Every eye followed us. Thomas walked slowly, carefully, as if he were carrying something fragile. Maybe he was. Maybe it was 30 years of hope. At the end of the aisle stood Bennett, my fiancé. His eyes were shining, and suddenly I realized something. He wasn't surprised. He knew. The realization hit me, but there was no time to think about it. We reached the front. Thomas squeezed my hand gently. Then he leaned close. His voice cracked. "I've been trying to get here for a very long time." That was all he said, but somehow it felt heavier than every speech I'd ever heard. The ceremony continued. I married Bennett, I said my vows, I smiled for photographs, but part of me couldn't stop looking at the man sitting quietly in the third row. The man who had apparently spent decades trying to find me. The man I knew absolutely nothing about. The truth came later. Months earlier, my mother had finally confessed everything. Not because she wanted to, because she couldn't live with it anymore. The story I'd grown up hearing was a lie. Thomas hadn't abandoned me. He hadn't disappeared. He hadn't chosen another life. He had been pushed out, erased. According to my mother, Thomas and she had separated when I was very young. Not because of abuse, not because of addiction, simply because their relationship ended. At first, he remained involved. He visited constantly, paid support, called regularly, loved me openly. Then Gerald entered the picture, and everything changed. Gerald wanted a complete family, not a shared family, a complete one. He wanted Thomas gone. What happened next would destroy 3 decades of my life. When I was 6 years old, Gerald pursued custody. Witnesses appeared in court. They claimed Thomas was unstable, dangerous, and alcoholic. None of it was true, but Thomas couldn't afford expensive lawyers. Gerald could. The court believed the lies. Thomas lost visitation, then custody, then eventually his parental rights entirely. Legally, he ceased to exist in my life. Meanwhile, I grew up believing he never wanted me. The worst part? My mother learned the truth years later. Gerald eventually admitted what he'd done. He expected her to be grateful. Instead, she spent 20 years drowning in guilt, yet she still stayed silent. because sometimes guilt becomes its own prison. When she finally confessed everything, I didn't know what to feel. Anger, shock, grief, relief, all of it mixed together. How do you mourn a relationship you never had? How do you miss someone you don't remember? How do you forgive 30 years that were stolen? I didn't have answers, neither did she. Then came the biggest surprise. Bennett already knew. A few weeks before the wedding, my mother had contacted Thomas. She told him about the ceremony. She gave him the address, the date, the time, and she asked whether he wanted to come. He said yes immediately. No hesitation, no bitterness, no conditions, just yes. Later, Bennett met him. They talked privately. My future husband wanted to know who this man was before bringing him into our lives. What he discovered changed everything. Thomas had saved every photograph, every birthday card returned unopened, every letter, every court document, every memory, for 29 years. He kept a box filled with proof that he never stopped loving me. Not once, not ever. After the reception ended, Gerald left without speaking to me. No congratulations, no apology, nothing. The man I'd spent my entire life trying to please simply walked away. Strangely, it didn't hurt as much as I expected, because for the first time, I understood something. His rejection wasn't about me. It never had been. The empty space I'd carried my entire life wasn't proof that I was unworthy. It was proof that someone had worked very hard to convince me I was. That realization changed everything. A week later, I met Thomas for coffee. Then again, a month later. Then again and again. Neither of us knew how to act. You can't compress 30 years into a conversation. You can't suddenly become father and daughter because a court document says so. Relationships don't work that way. Trust doesn't work that way. Love doesn't work that way. So we started small. Coffee, stories, questions, silences. One afternoon, he brought a plastic sleeve. Inside was a drawing. The paper was yellow with age. The crayon colors had faded. I recognized it immediately. I'd drawn it when I was 4. A tiny house, a bright sun, 2 stick figures, one large, one small. Underneath, in childish handwriting, were 2 words, my dad. Thomas had carried that drawing for nearly 3 decades. Longer than some marriages survive, longer than many friendships last, longer than I'd even known the truth. When I looked up, his eyes were wet, so were mine. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Sometimes the most important things are already understood. Today, we're still learning each other. We're still rebuilding, still discovering what was stolen. But we're doing it honestly, and that's enough. People ask whether I regret letting Thomas walk me down the aisle. The answer is simple, no. Because that walk wasn't really about a wedding, it was about truth finally catching up. 31 years late, but not too late. The father I thought abandoned me never stopped searching. The father I trusted betrayed me. And the man who stepped forward when I stood alone gave me something priceless. Not a perfect ending, not lost time returned. Something better. The truth. And sometimes truth arrives quietly. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask permission. It simply steps out of the shadows, offers its arm, and waits for you to decide whether you'll take it. That day, I did. And it changed my life forever.